thank you first for joining us. This is the third in the series of 6 seminars in the series Eyes on the Future, Skills to Help Further Your Career. And this particular session is honing your networking skills, both in person and virtually, because I firmly believe that we will be networking in person again soon. And I think we all need to have a little positive attitude about that, because yes, I'm with you, Heather. So let's cross our fingers. But thank you for joining us. Also want to mention special thanks to our presenting sponsor, CPS Recruitment. CPS Recruitment is a wonderful partner of Center State CEOs, very supportive of the work that we do. And CPS is a great resource for any of you. If you are, not only if you are looking for a job, but if your company is looking to hire, CPS Recruitment can help you with both of those things. So certainly reach out to them if that's something that you're interested in. But thank you to CPS Recruitment for their sponsorship of this event. We are only able to host these kind of events and bring these quality events to you with the support of our sponsors. So thank you very much. With that, I want to hand it over this morning to our moderator, Lizette Lewis. Lizette is a coworker of mine and Lisa Mitats at Center State CEO. She recently joined our team as the Racial Equity and Social Impact Coordinator. She's doing an outstanding job, and we're thrilled to have her as a part of our team. And I think this is a great opportunity for you to meet Lizette, because I think your business could benefit from working with Lizette and her team on your diversity and inclusion efforts within your company. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lizette. And again, thank you very much. Lizette, take it away, my friend.
Thank you, Beth. That was an awesome introduction. I'm very excited. Good morning, everyone. I know it's 9 a.m. On a Tuesday, but I hope that this discussion this morning is going to be very fruitful for everyone. I'm very excited to be moderating this session with an amazing slate of women panelists. And so I just want to kind of just start by sharing a little bit about networking and how I was offered an opportunity with Center State CEO through a former position or supervisor that I had. So just to kind of combine networking in ways that it's important. So my background is in urban planning. And so I think that diversity and equity, of course, is very similar in that sense. However, I actually was offered this position through a mentor of mine who is now my supervisor. And that connection stemmed from a former position that I was in. And so one, I guess, professional hack that I would say, or professional tip, is make sure you stay in touch with networks and connections, because you never know how that may impact you in the future. So with that being said, I would love for the panelists to introduce themselves, and I'm going to start with Jody.
Thank you, Lizette. And hello, everyone. I am Jody Frawley with Amplified Digital Agency and Lee Enterprises. I've had the pleasure for 30 years of networking and helping businesses grow their business through marketing channels. And I have never worked a day in my life because I have a curious mind. I love asking a lot of questions and getting to know people. And to me, networking is just all about connecting, whether it's doing posts on social media, meeting in person, at the grocery store, everywhere I go. I just am always excited to meet new people and learn what they're doing and connect with them on some level, because we all have things in common. And to me, that's all that networking is finding something in common. So I do that through my job every day with marketing. I call myself the great matchmaker, because when I talk to businesses, I'm finding out who it is they want to talk to, and I'm reaching out to them. I'm counseling them on the message they want to to have to be in front of those ideal clients. And that's the same type of thing as we do in networking all day long. So marketing, networking, matchmaking, whatever you want to call it. I guess it comes naturally for me because I just love to learn about different people and share that information and connect people. So I'm Jody Frawley with Amplified Digital and Lee Enterprises. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Jody. Sarah, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I am Sarah Parton. I'm a community development liaison for Visions Federal Credit Union. So I see Jody around town all the time. I want to say thank you really quickly as well to Beth and Lisa for inviting me to speak today. Center State has been a huge part of my job for every job I've had through the networking opportunities that they provide and connections that we get from them. So for me, I think networking will get you as far as you put into it. It's a huge part of pretty much everybody's job. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. For example, I'm not in sales, right? So, but I do networking all the time because it's really crucial to getting your message across, whatever that message might be. So again, I'm Sarah Parton. I'm a community development liaison with Visions Federal Credit Union.
Thank you, Sarah. Heather?
Hi, Heather Vashaw. I am Vice President Human Resources at Pathfinder Bank in Oswego. And even though my office is in Oswego, Pathfinder Bank covers, Oswego and Onondaga County, as well as Utica with our 11 locations. And the way that I look at networking, well, first of all, before we jumped on with everybody, we talked about how we can't wait till we can network in person more. And I'm totally on board with that. I'm like Jody. I like to meet people. I like to find out what they do, what makes them tick. Just that people are fascinating and interesting things. So part of my job is to connect, candidates with the right jobs. We are growing as an organization. We also make connections through our customers and our businesses, and we bring folks together that way as well. So, as the panelists have already said, networking happens everywhere for many different reasons, but it's definitely one of the best things you can learn from and grow from and just flourish.
Thank you. So I just want to, before we get started and engaged, I think it's really important to maybe touch on professional networking etiquette. And so we're in a virtual setting, which is very exciting. As Jody mentioned, and the other panelists, we want to make sure everyone is engaged. So if possible, we would love to see faces. That would be wonderful. I see some coworkers on. If you could show your faces, that would be wonderful. Just to set the stage for the discussion. Really, we're not going to be using slides, so it would just be nice to stay engaged that way. Thank you, Jen, Jess, Melissa. Okay, so let's get started. So a quick hack that I kind of went over. I looked up the term of what a seasoned networker was, or a good networker. And the term gregarious came to mind. I think that's really interesting. Someone social, someone outgoing. And then I thought to myself, there's different characteristics of people. So there's introverts, there's extroverts, there's people who thrive in virtual settings versus in-person settings. So I just wanted to kind of set the stage first to see what your thoughts are on what networking is, or what the traits are. Maybe in one word. Can some folks share, maybe in the chat, one word that comes to mind when you think of a good networker? Or you can unmute yourselves and share as well.
I would say an opportunist.
Opportunist. Thank you, Charlie. So Jessica said relationships. Beth's in the chat saying connections. Sarah said charisma. You have to have charisma. Okay, curiosity. Someone who's open? Okay. Interactive and outgoing. Stephanie, any thoughts? I've seen you before, so it's nice to see your face again. Melissa, any thoughts? We're getting a lot of great responses in the chat. Listeners, outgoing. Okay, so I just bring that up because I think that the panelists are going to do a great job of kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of virtual versus in person. But my number one tip is just to be authentic and just to be yourself and engaged in the environment that you're in. So with that being said, I'm going to have Jody get into her discussion and get going.
Sure. So as I mentioned, I've been doing this 30 years. I started my career in Oswego. So I was at a radio station and I immediately joined the chamber. So I started meeting people everywhere. Actually, I should back up because the reason I got the job in Oswego was a referral, a connection from college. A professor of mine who actually told me in his class, he thought I would be good in sales. I'm like, oh gosh, no, I don't want to work in sales. I want to write radio and TV commercials. And sure enough, the first job I ever had was at a radio station in Oswego that our 70% of my grade from class was to set up that radio station, to do the FCC application, the business plan, the marketing plan, what have you. And so my very first job was from networking, from connections. And every job from that day, I have never to this day worked at a job that I actually submitted a resume through anywhere. It was all through referrals, people talking to me or me putting it out there to say, I think I'm ready for a change. Here's what I would just start talking to people and then they would connect me to somebody they heard. And that's how I have gotten every single job in the 30 years I've been blessed to work in marketing. So anyways, there's the employment piece in terms of, putting it out there for new jobs. The relationships with new customers started with the chamber and it ends with the chamber. No, they're not paying me to say this, but I did start with the chamber and it was funny because it was the Fulton Oswego Chamber. And I was brand new to the area. I literally had been here 6 months and the president of the chamber was Ann Marabito Snyder. And she says, oh my gosh, have you lived here all your life? And I said, no, I've been here 6 months, but I just got out there. I went to every event I possibly could, talked to people, and she thought I was a homegrown Fulton girl. So that's part of just putting yourself out there. Again, I said, I'm very curious and I'm not an introvert. So it was easy to do that, right? Let's fast forward quickly to COVID. Everything shut down. And I was very blessed that I had been working. I actually done a ton of networking with people in the capital region, and it's all virtual. So when everything shut down, a lot of my connections on LinkedIn were out in the capital region, and I would see that they were having a virtual networking. Would you like to join? And I was like, yes, yes, yes. So I just joined everywhere I possibly could and have met so many people that way, to the point where I learned, I booked my cabin for vacation last year through a networking, somebody I met on a virtual networking. Wonderful cabin out on Loon Lake. I helped others get jobs, because we'd meet in these groups and someone would be on there looking for a job. And the big thing with me with networking is to be a giver. And I didn't learn that early on. I used to go to networking events and think, all right, what am I going to get out of this? So I'd like to emphasize that a good networker is somebody who is a giver. They listen to somebody, they hear that they have a problem, and you know somebody that could help them, and you want to immediately connect them, and you reaching out and helping them. That was a game changer when that light bulb went off, that, I'm not there to get something. I'm there to give and contribute to the group. I will add that the virtual networking for any introverts out there who may still have their cameras off, virtual networking is great for introverts because you have a set space. Oftentimes you go into breakout rooms, so you're even smaller groups. You're each given a chance to talk a little bit and share who you are, what makes you tick, how you help your customers or clients. And I've talked to many introverts who love virtual networking. They go in person and they are scared to death to approach somebody to talk. But in a virtual environment, they thrive. So any of you introverts, this is a great platform for you. I'll add one other thing, and then I'm going to be quiet and move on to the rest of our panelists, that social media in general, I look at as a networking platform. You're putting out information, you're sharing things about yourself, you're reading others' information and commenting on those. You're making connections just through social media alone. And I can tell you, I got business last year just from people who saw me on LinkedIn and reached out to me to have a one-on-one conversation. And I've built websites for people. I have done social media for them. All of the different types of marketing channels that I work with happen just by being on LinkedIn as a social media, networking platform. So there's a quick run through of how networking has helped me, and I'm happy to answer other questions later, but let's hear from others. Did I keep it to 5 minutes, Lizette? Did I do all right?
Yeah, you did great. Thank you, Jody. You did wonderful. I think LinkedIn is definitely a great professional tool to use. So thank you for bringing that up. And one other note that I would like to mention is some of us have our kind of roles or companies where we work located at the bottom next to our name. And so that's a great way to make sure you somewhat stay engaged. If you can't be on video, or even if you can, just to, if you feel comfortable kind of just sharing your role or the company you work for. And if you don't know how to do that, on the top right hand of your screen, your video screen, there's the 3 little dots. If you just click that, go below, I think maybe 4 or 5 rows, there should be a little a title that says rename, and you can just easily put in the company you work for. So that's another professional etiquette tool that I find very useful, and Jody definitely reminded me of. So Sarah, we would love to hear from you, and I guess how networking has intertwined with your role in membership and working at the credit union, Visions Federal Credit Union.
Well, good morning again. It's always funny because I fall right in the middle of an introvert and extrovert. Like, it's a running joke now that when I'm home, I love to be home. I don't really want to go do activities, but when I'm on the clock, I'm on, and I really enjoy it. So for those of you who fall on either side of the spectrum, I get you 100% because I am right down the middle. So for me, I started networking very early on in my career. And as I mentioned, I wasn't in sales. I was running the volunteer program for Meals on Wheels here in Syracuse. And I pretty quickly learned that throwing a volunteer ad up online wasn't going to get me all of the support that I needed, or, posting in the newspaper, things like that. It just wasn't working. So I decided to take to the streets. Literally, I started joining groups like 40 Below and trying to attend networking events, anything, especially that I could find that was free. Because again, nonprofit world, we didn't have a lot of money to play with. So I made it a point to try and find opportunities to meet more people who may have access to groups of people that would ultimately serve Meals on Wheels well. So whether that was volunteers, sponsors for things, you name it, we were looking for all of those things. So I started small. I started with smaller groups. And then as I got more comfortable, I was able to start attending bigger networking events, like ones with Center State CEO. After I left Meals on Wheels, I went over to the Alzheimer's Association and I covered 14 counties. So like Jody, we had a huge footprint in a lot of areas that I was wildly unfamiliar with. I always say I'd never seen so much of Central New York until I started doing that job, because I really didn't leave the greater Syracuse area aside from going to college. So I had to join chambers across the board. I was in Herkimer, I was in Utica, I was all the way up in St. Lawrence County. So personally, I really leaned on chambers to help me network. So whether it was through events or even asking for some connections, I would reach out to whatever chamber membership manager I could and say, hey, I need some help. We're trying to do X, Y, and Z in your community. Do you have any ideas? And I mean, it's not like attending an event, but it is networking. It's building those connections and finding who has those relationships that I might be able to leverage something from. And like Jody said, you can't go in with a hard sale. People don't like being sold to. This is, not news, but it is really great to be a connector. So offering opportunities that you can provide or connections that you can provide to other people has been really helpful to me. That's why I put connector in my LinkedIn title. Another thing that I always say is you get what you put out of it. So whether that's your chamber membership, whether that's attending an event virtual or in person, or it's your LinkedIn profile, if you're not actively using any of those things and being super engaged with them, they really won't get you far. I know I've definitely talked to folks who leave a networking event and they're like, well, I don't think I got anything out of it. And what they mean is I didn't get a sale tonight. And that's not really how it works. So really continuing to stay engaged, attend as much as you can, and speak up. So if it's a virtual event, don't sit in silence, put a question in, answer the questions that are coming up. A lot of times hosts for Zoom or whatever platform we're using will try to engage with the audience. And if that comes up, please participate, join in the conversation, because you might see someone say something that clicks with you. And you might be able to connect with someone in the chat of a networking event that you didn't think you could before. And when you see people like Jody on LinkedIn, if you want to attend those events, those networking opportunities, reach out. I joined some of Jody's networking opportunities at the beginning of the shutdown. So, people want to connect. So please take advantage of that and build relationships, and those relationships will turn into business eventually. And I think, am I within my 5 minutes?
You did great, Sarah. Thank you. I think you touched upon a great point in terms of where do you network? I mean, networking can be anywhere. In the professional setting, it's, social events, it's professional events, but there's also alumni associations you can join to keep connected. There's community events that you can stay engaged in. And so it's all about finding what works for you and making sure you're engaged, as Sarah mentioned. So Heather, you have a unique perspective, I think, being the VP of Human Resources at Pathfinder Bank. So can you share a little bit of your experience with networking?
I can. I am not a salesperson like the other two ladies on the panel, so a little bit different with my networking. I utilize some of the groups that I belong to. For example, Society for Human Resource Management, which for short is SHRM, if you're not familiar. They're a great resource, especially during COVID, to help me figure out what's going on, what are the best practices, how do we handle this ever-changing world. So you're gathering information from your network, from the people you're involved with. I got my MBA online through Liberty University, met people from all over the United States, use those kinds of networks. I also lived in Florida for 10 years. So those people I continually stay in touch with. And that's one of the things, and I think Jody touched on it, is that you have to nurture those relationships. You have to reach out every once in a while, even if it's a message or a card in the mail or an email. Just say, hey, I'm thinking of you. How are you doing? How are you handling this situation? But on another aspect is the recruitment side of things. So we are trying new things right now. It's been the strangest thing I've ever seen in my 20 plus years in HR with regard to getting candidates to show up and come and for an interview. And then when they come for the second interview, they need to show up, and they're ghosting us, it seems like. And we've hired folks that aren't showing up the day they're supposed to start. So challenging to network and get and gain candidates that are going to show up and come and want to work. And I understand it's an environment where folks want to work from home or have to worry about childcare. So we are taking that into consideration, but it's been a struggle. So we have to network everywhere we go, whether it's, you know, at school where I drop my daughter off and talk to the parents there, or at a dinner and you meet a new friend or a friend of a friend, and always, you know, make sure you're listening and thinking about, you know, how you can bring those two people together. Like Sarah said, connections, create those connections. I think that's really it. I don't have the vast experience. I will say that I prefer in person. I like to go out and have a glass of wine and talk to people and find out, like I said earlier, what makes them tick. This virtual stuff, I'm working on it. It's not as easy for me to jump on LinkedIn during the day, because it's very, very busy right now, because I handle the whole life cycle of an employee from, you know, recruitment, onboarding, offboarding, compensation, benefits, the whole gamut. So finding time throughout the day to do that is not easy.
Thank you, Heather. One question that I had was, since you are in HR, how do you connect internally within networks? Like within your company, is there a way that you do have to connect internally?
I touch every single employee. We have a little under 180 employees. So they all have my cell phone number. I am on the clock 24/7 basically. And it is next to me at bed when I go to bed at night. So I, you know, when we have a daily attestation that we are the health screening questions. So if they answer yes to one of those questions, they are to call me. So I kind of network with everyone, and then I have to, you know, reach out to a manager and talk with that. So definitely, I don't know that I think of it as networking. That's my job.
That's a good point. Thank you, Heather. So listening, you brought up listening is definitely part of networking. And so Jody, do you have any tips for kind of how to kind of listen and focus while networking?
Yeah, definitely. So I will tell you a challenge that I have had as I've gotten older. In-person networking in a loud room, I can't hear very often. So I have to be really attentive to listen to somebody. And I think the first step really is taking an interest in someone else. You're not at a networking event to spiel everything that you do, right? You're there to meet people organically, find something in connection. I usually start at the food table, and I miss that about the virtual networkings, because that's where I connect with everybody. A glass, like you said, like Heather said, a glass of wine, some food at the table. That's where I oftentimes connect, and I miss that in the virtual. But you know, just taking an interest in somebody and making sure you hear their name. So one of the things I did during COVID is I became certified as a Dale Carnegie instructor. And one of the things that we teach actually in the class too is that conversational, it's called conversational stacking, but taking an interest, making sure you hear their name clearly. And if you don't, ask them again, because the worst thing is to come back and call somebody the wrong name. And we've all done it. We usually forget somebody's name the minute they say it, because we're already thinking about who we are to tell them who we are and, you know, spiel everything out. So really taking time to hear their name, repeat it. You know, we actually say try to associate with something so it'll be helpful to remember it. And then we go through a number of things, asking them about their family, where they live. It's this whole thing that we teach. But anyways, not to go into Dale Carnegie, but kind of just naturally go through when you meet somebody new, when you made your first friend, what did you start to ask about them? What was important to know about them? Things that you could connect with. Oh my gosh, you've got a dog. I love my dog. What kind of dog do you have? Oh yeah, where do you take them out to go, to the park? Whatever it might be. I find that a first job question is always, people's faces light up when you ask them what their first job was. And anytime you're asking them about what they do, how they help people, people love to talk about what they do. So really listening to that and being curious and adding to it is what I recommend for networking and build upon it.
Can I add, Lizette, too, that don't listen for your turn to talk, listen to listen and hear. A lot of times people are just waiting for you to stop or take a breath and then interject their sales pitch or their piece or whatever story they want to tell. And, it's great to have that conversation in the back and forth, but listen to listen. And that's a very different thing than just listening until it's your turn to go.
It's a great point. Heather, any thoughts? I know you just wrote something in the chat about connecting, so that's great.
That was one of the things that I've learned too, is that when you're on these types of meetings, that if you put your contact information or you're having great conversation and you want to keep this group connected and together and maybe reach out individually, that you put your contact information in the chat so that you might reconnect later on.
Definitely. I think part of being a good networker, as we know, is listening. And so since we're on this call, I think it's important to just get a sense of why some attendees showed up today. So like in terms of, kind of just getting feedback, why did you decide to attend the session today? Why was it important to kind of hone your networking skills? Feel free to unmute yourself quickly or write in the chat. I'm just curious.
So as an employee at Center State CEO, I always like to see the faces who are engaged with us and put faces with names. And that's a big thing too, because working at Center State, you see a lot of names, you see a lot of companies, you see a lot of, but sometimes it's like, who is that? And I love to be able to place faces with names of the people who are engaged with us. And I'm kind of like you, Sarah. It's weird to come from someone who has been in sales and hospitality and all the whole shebang. But I'm kind of right down the middle. I'm a little extrovert, I'm a little introvert. So networking, really, it doesn't come super naturally to me. I do kind of have to work at it. I will say too that my husband he's a wonderful networker. I'm always like, how do you remember that? And so tips and tricks from him on how he remembers just the most minute details about people. I'm like, wow, could I just take a little bit of your brain power and so taking those, it is truly active listening. He is a fantastic listener. And so I try as hard as I can to do those things too. I guess it's kind of like practice makes perfect in a way. You're never perfect, but I think he's pretty darn close. So I try to take those tips and tricks, and repeat people's names, so that it gets into my brain, so that I can take these faces and remember the faces with the names. So I appreciate being a part of it. And that's why I'm here today. Yay.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else?
So honestly, the reason why I attended was I like the fact that the panel are people from our community and people that are out doing it every day. So sometimes when I go to training classes, and I don't want to like bash anything or anybody, but I like to get feedback from people who is actually doing it every day, all the time. Because if you're just doing it a little bit here and there and then training about it, I don't ever seem to get only the same exact thoughts when I'm in a training. But I will say I joined because the panel was people I know and people that are in our communities. So that's why I joined today.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Thank you. So it looks like Melissa. Okay, so we're getting some answers in the chat. So COVID and the impact on childcare. Networking has been rare to kind of work with scheduling, and Melissa sharing that she was excited for an opportunity to refresh and learn about networking skills, which is great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So I think another good aspect of the conversation that I would love to hear the panelists discuss is maybe forms of networking. So are there higher forms of networking that are better in certain aspects versus maybe in person, maybe via phone call? Can you share a little bit about kind of like the different forms of networking and maybe how to utilize those? So Jody?
Sure. It's interesting you say that. So during COVID, one of the networking groups I found was called Ripple Effects. And it was a group out in the capital region. And it was wonderful. The way they did their networking is you would come together every week and you would share who you had met with, and others in the group would ask for an introduction if they wanted to meet those people. And that was the first time I had ever experienced a networking group like that. And it was really interesting because, you know, you'd share, oh, I met this person, you tell a little bit about them and this is what they do. And, you know, if others were interested in meeting that person as well, you would make us a warm introduction for them. So that was kind of interesting. But I will say it ran its course, you know, so I was with it for probably almost a year, I will say. And the thing I will mention in terms of, you know, better or worse is knowing who are really good, who complement you really well. So a group I ended up in, or as the groups morphed from this group, I was with a lot of B2C people and I need to talk to businesses. So for me to network with other people who are talking to businesses is more valuable to me, right? So if someone is talking to a business that is similar, that is a good client for me, whether it's industry or just mindset, that is something that I find valuable. And I seek that out now. When I meet others that have that giver spirit, when they are talking to other business owners and, you know, are open to sharing those introductions and what have you, that's what I look for now in a formalized networking type of atmosphere. Other than that, there are people I just call up that, you know, I've known for years and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? Could you give me, you know, do you feel comfortable making an introduction? So just asking, you know, for friends, you know, do you know who to contact here? Do you know who to contact there? Do you know someone who does this or that? I mean, because we do it on social media all the time, on Facebook even, which isn't necessarily what people consider a business platform, but we ask for recommendations all the time. So that's how, you know, in terms of evaluating, that's probably what I look for. People who are really open to sharing and others who are working with other business owners for my particular industry.
Good point. Thank you, Jody. Sarah?
I don't want to be a broken record, but I don't know that there's one form that's truly, truly better than the other. It all depends on what you're putting into it. You can go to 100 networking events and make no connections. in person, you know, and you could do the same virtually, you could do the same over the phone. So it's really about trying to engage with people where you can, and making an honest effort to be an active listener. But one thing we haven't touched on yet that I kind of meant to mention earlier was follow-up is almost just as important as engaging with folks, first of all. So, and by follow-up, I don't mean send me an email pitch with your sale. Truly try and remember something from the conversation you had. If it's virtual, that's perfect because you can take notes on who does what and something someone said. That's actually a really great tool for virtual networking, is to just keep a notepad by your side. I do. I've been making notes this entire time. You can't see it with my virtual background, so that was wasted. See, Heather has it too. So yeah, the follow-up is just as important as the activity itself. So whether that's let's go for a walk and talk, let's grab a coffee, shoot an email, connect on LinkedIn. I sent Heather a LinkedIn connection this morning because I realized we weren't connected. So, you know, that's really important. And I think that's something to keep in mind, is it's less about the format in which the networking is and more about what you do with the information you receive.
Great point. Heather, anything to add?
I agree with both of the other panelists. Remember to, like Sarah said, don't make a sales pitch. You need to be giving in your connections. But you know, when I think of, and Lizette, you asked me earlier about internal networking and using different medium. It depends on the situation. So, you know, sometimes it is a phone call, sometimes it's a sit down, let's do this face to face, even though we have to wear our masks or whatever, or it's an email. You know, it's situational, definitely, and you just kind of have to read what works best for that situation and or for the person that you're dealing with.
Good point. I know we have a few minutes left. I do want to ask about icebreakers. What are good ways to kind of engage with your network or your audience when networking? Any initial thoughts on that?
I mean, I kind of mentioned earlier, if it's virtual, really utilize that chat box to the best of your ability, whether it's to the group or to an individual person. I know that when I was attending one of these for Center State last year that I remembered yesterday, I actually screenshotted email addresses so I wouldn't miswrite them down. So I could, you know, make sure I connected with folks, and I did that afterwards. And I think, you know, utilizing that, answering questions, but also if it's in person, just don't be afraid to go up and introduce yourself. In this day and age, be careful of shaking hands and all of that. I ask people first if they're comfortable, but ask what people do, not what company do you work for, but what do you do? Because what you do is different than where you work. And so I think that that's a really great starter question. I'm familiar with the conversation stack that Jody mentioned, so I'll leave that to her. She's a pro.
Yeah, or just say, tell me more about yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One thing I'll mention just real quickly on the virtual, some people think you can't make connections virtually because you're not in person, but think about it. I've let you into my home. You know, oftentimes we see animals and children and what have you. I've gotten to know people at a deeper level virtually through different, you know, whether it's a one-on-one conversation through Zoom or a networking event. It's a whole different level once you've let somebody into your home that you get to know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this white void with a Visions logo. This is my home. Welcome, everybody.
So I think the group has been a little bit quiet this morning. I know it's early, but I just wanted to open up the floor for any questions, any thoughts about networking throughout the conversation that you had, anything that you want to ask and specifically for the speakers today.
So I don't have any questions, but I will just share my biggest takeaway, I guess, was kind of what Jody started with. What really hit home for me was going into networking, not you know, what I'm going to get out of it, but what can I give? I think that's a good little post-it for me as I go into virtual ones, what I want to remember going in. And also some of the things that Heather shared, you know, sometimes for me it's a challenge, you know, a busy work day. A lot of the virtual networkings are during the day. And, you know, this past year I've, you know, tried to get involved with some things, but they're always, you know, first thing in the morning when I'm most productive and want to get everything done off of my list. You know, and I don't like to say, oh, I'm too busy for some things. It sounds silly saying it out loud, but just hearing that others are kind of trying to juggle that and struggling with that as well, just kind of validates, you know, how I've been feeling this past 18 months during COVID.
Yeah, I'll share as well that for me, so I'm coming from I think a very different background than a lot of people. I do engineering and don't really work in sales or HR or anything like that. But one of the reasons I signed up for this series is I'm also kind of growing my skill set as like what we call like a people manager. And so I thought this was a great opportunity to get connected with the local community and I think hear from I think Charlie noted it, but, you know, people who are in our community and are kind of the local experts in what they're talking about. And so it's been great to hear those things. And, you know, for me, I'm kind of thinking of this skill set and how do I take this back to maybe this group of science-based people who maybe are not the most gregarious or outgoing sometimes and promote that within the group. And I think I've heard some great tips and tricks on how to bring it back and be a connector to them for that. So thank you.
Reagan, thank you for bringing that up because I think professional development opportunities are a great networking place. I joined the tech and culture ones through the chamber a lot just to learn. Like I said, I'm an eternal curious person. So I love to learn about new things. And then there's so many young people there and I want to get them connected so they stay here. And so I love professional development. I think I put in the chat that, you know, I would attend webinars of businesses that, you know, I want to learn about them. Whether it's more knowledge that I can share with a client or somebody I know that I can say, oh, you should attend this because this was so cool. Yeah, so I think that's right down the line of what you're looking for, Reagan.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done a lot of that too. I've attended, Beth, do we have any kind of count as to how many center state events I've attended in the last decade? I think it's probably more than not. So, you know, and that's not
so many.
It's professional.
So many to the point where I feel like you're a coworker and not like a valued member.
Well, we appreciate it. And it's there's so much you can gain from all of these things. It's not just the business after hours and the speed networking, it's professional development, whether it's learning those tips and tricks or just meeting people. And one more thing too that I want to throw in there, since my background was in nonprofits, is consider joining boards and volunteering. It's an awesome way to meet people and give back. Like, you can't do better than those kind of things. So please consider that if you're interested in joining boards or anything, you know, connect with your local nonprofit community. Pam at Leadership Greater Syracuse is an awesome connection for the ROI of civic engagement. I'm happy to help if someone's interested in something like that, but that's another really tremendous way to get involved. And it doesn't mean full board membership. You can just join a committee, you know, or an event planning group. Those are really great ways to stay connected as well.
I'm looking for members on my fundraising committee at Toomey Residential and Community Services. So anybody want to help? We have a lot of fun.
See how this kind of event just kind of starts to connect other people. I did kind of want to hear Jen or Melissa, if you have any thoughts. It looks like you have some interesting background in terms of where you work. So.
Yeah, so I joined the event. I'm new to the sales world. This is my first professional role in a sales position. So I'm taking a lot out of it, and there's several different things people have said that I would have never considered like a networking opportunity. I think Heather said, you know, she said something about that's just my job, but it's a way to network, and some things that I would have never considered a networking opportunity. So it's kind of with LinkedIn, I think about my profile and I can't remember the last time I looked at it or updated it, but that's a huge opportunity that I think as soon as I get off this call, I'm going to go look at my profile and kind of update that, because so for me, joining it was just exactly that, getting those things, because I'm new to the whole sales world and networking. And as we're going through, I'm just thinking of things that I've done that I, like I said, didn't realize were networking, but oh, I can go out and reach out to, you know, in previous roles, vendors or things that I've worked with that now could help me in this role in sales. So thank you.
I just wanted to say real quick, that was one of the things I wanted to touch on. It just didn't go in that direction. I had it in my notes about updating your profile. I'm guilty of it too. I got married in June. I didn't change my name until probably a month ago.
I was just thinking the same thing, is that I got married this summer as well. And I'm like, I don't even think it has my right last name anymore. Same exact thing.
You know,
So.
yeah,
Yep.
So projects that you worked on, hobbies and skills, you know, all that stuff. None of it's unimportant.
From a posting on LinkedIn thing, I will tell you, my most popular posts I do are usually something personal. It's my hiking, it's my kayaking. I do sprinkle it with some, you know, advice on marketing, but nobody reads that. They like to get to know you, and they like to just, it's more, you know, fun, I guess.
Yeah, I think my most popular LinkedIn post was like a GIF of me and Otto on the court. Like, I think that's the
Love
most
it.
popular one.
Love it. I think it's 1 minute to 10 a.m. and I feel like we were starting to kind of like really get going. I think with virtual settings, it takes a little bit more time, but I think this has been a great conversation. Panelists, is there anything else you want to add before we hop off? I know there's a lot in the chat, so make sure that you get emails, contact info. I think that would be great to keep connected.
I'll just say, reach out anytime you want. I would love to connect with any and all of you and help you in any way I can.
I want to make a quick comment too, just in regards to Center State CEO. I think all of you are members that are on this call, and I think it's important to note that Center State CEO is a business leadership organization. We have many different facets of what we do, and the Chamber of Commerce piece is just one piece of what we do. And it's the Chamber of Commerce arm that generally hosts the networking events. And what we have found is that people who join the Chamber of Commerce join for two reasons: networking and visibility. And those answers are the same year after year. I mean, I've been with the organization 15 years and that has never changed. So we really encourage you to get involved in any of our networking events. Our events right now are virtual, but we do virtual speed networking. We do virtual business after hours, and we'd love to have you get more involved if you aren't already in those kinds of events. We really make it easy for you to connect with people that can help you, whether it be in your job, whether you're looking for a new job, looking for new vendors, looking for new partners, whatever it is. You know, check our events calendar because we'd love to have you join us.
Okay, well, it's 10 a.m. and it was a pleasure just being here and just engaging with everyone. I wish we had more time. I feel like with networking, sometimes things can go over, especially when you've had a glass of wine, Heather. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Beth, is there anything else that you would like to add before we end?
Again, special thanks to CPS Recruitment, our presenting sponsor. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, CPS Recruitment, and it's been a pleasure. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
It was nice to meet you all.
Yes, you
Nice
too.
meeting
Bye-bye.
you all.
Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everyone.